All right, Shalom. First off, and give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem Kadash. Want to give double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and elders of Great Millstone, and a sincere Shalom to the Akim out here that's doing again, pushing this work in truth and in sincerity. Want to go on this video, okay, about the biblical view of children, okay, and what it means to have a child. Okay, specifically for, a member of the hopeful elect. Okay, now it says the Bible presents, in the ChatGPT, it says the Bible presents children as more than just a biological outcome or emotional fulfillment. In Scripture, children are tied to inheritance, covenant, legacy, rulership, continuance of a household, and the survival of a righteous name in the earth. Okay, and I've just been meditating on this because a lot of people in this day and age, modern society, they have children, okay, but they don't know why they're having children. They have no plans, no vision, no purpose. Even if they, are financially able to handle the children, okay? There's no guarantee that the child is going to be raised up to the values that, you would expect, okay? But some of these people out here, they want to put a baby or have a baby or a child, right? And it's like an emotional fulfillment, and then some people, they try to live their life through their child, a life that they wasn't able to I'm talking about Jake, a life that they weren't able to have, okay? But with that said, for us that's in the know, okay, how we look at and view children, is, it's supposed to be a blessing from Yahweh Shah, okay? But it's also, depending on the situation, it could be hard, dealing with, the raising up of children, in this day and age, okay? Because this world is wicked. Now, it says a few major biblical themes, right? Multiplication of a righteous seed, right? If we have the hopeful elect, right, and we have children, males or female, right? Which the female, well, the male, is the continuation of the line. Okay, because once that woman, the daughter end up getting married off, that child that comes out of that woman, is not, the father, her father's seed. Okay, it's whatever, the child's father, the baby father is. Okay, so, a man would get with a woman and have a child. Okay, and when we get with, have a child, that's the multiplication of our seed. Okay, now, we hope and pray that, our children, are of the elect and that they, are able to, endure. Okay, but children, more, than likely are covered under their parents. Okay, that's just the order that the Lord set up. It says continuation of a family line. Okay, inheritance and legacy. And in this society, right, a lot of us don't really have an inheritance, or something to pass down to our children. Okay, if something was to go wrong, sometimes children inherit debt. They inherit curses from their parents. Okay, and it's like your child will have to grow up, and it's like, well, your father was this way, to the people. You know, he wasn't really that honorable. Okay. But that's a part of the, you know, the legacy, you know, when it comes down to a child. Okay. There's, you know, how you were raised, you know, where you come from, you know, what your children, you know, what do they have inherited? Okay. And that's why, you know, with a man that has a daughter, okay, if the daughter was just, you know, out there slutting around, okay, then the father inherited a bad name, because it's like, what did you teach your daughter? You know, that's one of the reasons why, you know, having a daughter is dangerous in this world. Having a son is dangerous too, you know, but the Bible, you know, talks about the the dangers of having a woman, okay, or a daughter, okay, compared to having a son. But, you know, trying to raise up a daughter in this society, you know, I don't have daughters, you know, specifically, okay, so I don't know how that, you know, how that feels, you know, from experience, you know, but I do have sons, you know, and I, you know, from how it was back then in ancient Israel, the father would marry off the daughter, you know, to a knowledgeable man, okay, and he would, you know, that man or that family of that man, the husband, you know, would pay the father of that daughter, okay, and that would be, you know, something that, you know, the father could use to, you know, further his family's, you know, lineage, okay, in different ways, okay. But when a daughter is just out here having you know, multiple baby daddies, you know, they got a child, you know, from a no good, okay, it could be just one child, and, you know, the you know, she don't even know who the father is, you know, or you know, she's at odds with the you know, the child's father, you know, that alone is, you know, a curse, okay. Whereas though in the kingdom, we're not going to have to worry about that. We're not going to have to worry about, you know, if I marry my daughter off, if, you know, they're going to break away from, you know, that child father, you know, broken homes, you know, or you know, if I have my son and my daughter, my son go marry somebody else, you know, another daughter, you know, from another household, that he's just going to leave that child, you know, he's not going to do what he's supposed to do, okay? Because in the kingdom, they're going to be raised right, you know, it's going to be on our inward parts. It says, building a household, a nation, passing down wisdom and laws, establishing future generations of the God. And that's what we, you know, we're having children, you know, the purpose of us having these children, you know, we dedicate our children, we should be, you know, unto, you know, Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua, okay, by some thoughts, okay. And that's why we don't look at, you know, children, you know, like they're a curse, you know, onto us, okay. Even though in this society right now, if you do have a child, you know, it can be like, you know, dang, like your child go to school, daycare, right? You don't know what they teaching the child, and then they, you know, you try to teach them some values and stuff like that, and they, you know, foolishness is bound in the heart of a child. So now your child is, you know, coming back home with some foolishness, or you know, going to school and telling them certain things that you tell them, you know, to the teachers, and the teachers could, you know, I don't know, you know, about your child. Your child was, you know, saying this, or, you know. So in this day and age is messed up, especially with these parents, you know, that don't be raising their child. Heck, your child could be somebody that, you know, got anger problems and stuff like that because we had help, you know. So, yeah, but do the child know that? Do the child understand that we're in hell, and that you got he could be what Edomite babies and stuff like that? Do your child know the difference in this society? No. Okay. We try to instill those values of what a child is supposed to do and everything like that. But having children right now is messed up because a lot of people out here, they don't have no purpose or plan. They just do whatever they got to do because they just living a carnal life. Okay. Whereas though for us, it's supposed to be spiritual. Okay. On the contrary. Okay. It says Genesis 1:28, be fruitful and multiply, and that's one of the the things that the Lord said. And I always say, if Yahweh Shem Yahweh wants a spirit here, it ain't nothing that you can do to stop that. Okay. I've lost children, in the truth. Okay. And I have children, young children. Okay. And Lord willing, I'm a man of the Lord willing, I'm of the elect, but my children, I try to instill the values, and if they, are there, it'll be a blessing because, if we have the elect, we'll be restoring the kingdom, bringing back, bringing back Israelites. Okay. And they'll be, in their right mind and everything. Okay. But yeah, the thing is to be fruitful and multiply, because we're supposed to be able to have children and enjoy our children. In this society, we can't. Okay. It says that command was connected to dominion, order, and inheritance in the earth. Okay. Psalm 127 and 3, right? And I had that scripture. It says, lo, children are an heritage of the Lord, right? It says, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. Okay? As arrows are in the hand of a mighty man, so are children of the youth. Okay? Happy is the man that has his quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but they shall speak with the enemies in the gate. Okay? So children are considered fruit to Yahweh Shem Yahweh. Okay? Because establishing future generations under Yahweh Shem Yahweh. Okay, now we know now, man. Okay, we got the right gospel, we got the right message. Okay? And living that message, towards, our children, we have a purpose. Okay? Our purpose in, creation is for Yahweh Shem Yahweh. Okay? We were made to worship the Lord. Okay? And our children, as well. And having, because children are one of the things that we could take out of this world if we have the elect. We can't take these jobs, these cars, or none of that stuff with us. Okay? It says the word heritage means inheritance or possession passed down through generations. It says, as arrows are in the hand of a mighty man, so are children of the youth. An arrow extends a man's reach beyond himself. Biblically, children were seen as an extension of a man's house, name, authority, labor, and future. Okay? The scripture constantly emphasizes fathers teaching sons, sons preserving the household, grandchildren continuing the line. Okay? It says, Proverbs 13 and 22, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. Okay? And this is something that we are thinking about, if we have the elect, then it starts with us. You know, we could be a part of something that is so, you know, beyond our imagination, man, of you know, magnificence. Okay? What we are a part of, and you know, we're the first fruits for Yahweh Shem Shah. So, you know, having children, you know, and grandchildren, and seeing, you know, the future generations after that, man, you know, that'll be a blessing. Because, hey, Adam, you know, people in the you know, the book of Genesis, you know, they was able to see you know, their great grandchildren, you know, and live long lives. Okay? And your children to be, you know, blessed. Okay? It says not just to his children, but to future generations. Right? These people nowadays, even if you have you know, some money, right, to pass down onto your children, who knows what your children are gonna do with that. You know? And I believe King Solomon was saying, you know, something along those lines. You know, when I pass away, you know, who knows what the next, you know, what my child will do. And look what happened. Look what, as soon as he passed away, right, his son went the hell off. Okay? And it was nothing like how his father was. Okay? It says, and in Deuteronomy 6, Israel was commanded to teach the laws continually to their children, so the nation and covenant identity will survive generation after generation. Okay? From a biblical perspective, children were never supposed to be raised without purpose, structure, identity, discipline, inheritance, wisdom, covenant, future stability. Okay? This world, you know, they try to take all those things away from us. You know, ask them what you want to be when you get older, you know. And, you know, when you try to say those things of what you want to be when you get older, you ain't never none of this stuff, man. I want to be the president of the United States. Like, come on now. We know that, you know, that's not realistic, and that shouldn't even be something that you would even want to be. You know? Yeah, I want to be a firefighter. You know, be a firefighter, you know? But, you know, being a man of the Lord or a woman of the Lord is more important. And those are two distinct roles. Okay? It says this is where your contrast comes in. Ecclesiastes repeatedly calls worldly labor and pursuits vanity when disconnected from God. And a lot of these people aren't connected to Yahweh Shem Shah. Okay, it's Ecclesiastes 1 and 2. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. The idea is not that children themselves are vanity, but that a life disconnected from righteousness, truth, and eternal purpose eventually becomes empty, temporary, and consumed by death and decay. A lot of these people that want to make it seem like they love their children, when that famine comes, they're going to end up eating their children. When that MOTB, which is the chip, you know, is made prevalent, they're going to be chipping their children because they're not dedicating their children onto Yahweh Shem Shah. Okay? A lot of these, you know, institutions are going to try to, you know, they want to try to get the children. They want to get the future generations. Okay? Well, in order for your child to continue here, he has to have this, and, you know, you have to be, you know, he have to be up to date with his shots. You know? And we coming upon a major time of persecution to where, you know, having children, you know, it might have touched on it a little bit, you know, recently, but it's going to be to a point in time, man, where it's going to be even hard for people with children. Okay? when you look at, Abraham was, ready to sacrifice his only child for Yahweh Shem Yahushua, But the Lord made a way for Abraham, which we know that, what you should know, if you didn't know, that Abraham's son Isaac was Yahweh Shah. Okay? Psalm 49 says, even wealthy men die and leave everything behind. So from a biblical viewpoint, if people have children with no instruction, no righteousness, no moral foundation, no vision, no lasting inheritance, no concern for future generations, and no covenant relationship with Yahweh Shem Yahushua, then the family line becomes spiritually directionless. Okay, Judges 2:10 shows an example of a generational collapse. There arose another generation after them which knew not the Lord. Okay, and this is one of the reasons why we're in the conditions that we are in. Of course, we know Esau forced his ways, made us lose our identity. Okay, but when we go even before Esau, right, our people, they wasn't teaching the children. Okay, and it got to the point where the next generation just wasn't even caring, didn't even care about the covenants and stuff like that. Okay, it says the concern in Scripture was always preserving a righteous lineage and household identity. The Bible also places heavy importance on the idea of a righteous seed. Proverbs 11:21, the seed of the righteous shall be delivered. Psalm 112:2, his seed shall be mighty upon earth. The generation of the upright shall be blessed. Okay? Psalm 112 is almost entirely about legacy. Wealth and the house. It says stability, honorable remembrance, descendants blessed afterward. That's why in Scripture, lineage mattered so much. Abraham's seed, David's house, tribal inheritance, genealogies, fathers blessing sons before death. Okay? The biblical mindset was generational, not merely individual. From the perspective you're describing, the contrast is one lineage builds towards righteousness, inheritance, remembrance, and future glory. The other lives only for temporary pleasure, consumption, survival, and eventually disappearance. And some people, they, like I said, they live through their children. They got, all of these benefits and stuff like that. Hey, look at those rats. Man, they getting all type of welfare from off of their, children, man. Okay? They survive and they're thriving off of that. Okay? Some people, love to claim their children, and, you get certain benefits, That's why that's a good thing. I have a lot of children. Which one you want to claim on the taxes? Okay, it says Ecclesiastes touches this frustration repeatedly, laboring only to leave things behind without knowing what becomes of it. Meanwhile, the righteous hope described in Scripture is enduring remembrance and continuation. Psalm 112:6, the righteous shall be an everlasting remembrance. His seed shall inherit the earth. Psalm 25:13. Okay? And that's also, for anybody who doesn't have children. You do have children in the, if you can endure not having children, through all this madness, but you can't, like I said, if the Lord want a spirit here, you can't stop that, but, not having children here, the scriptures talk about that, that's a blessing. You're able to get up and freely go, you know, in certain cases. Okay? We don't have to worry about the women nagging and stuff like that, you know, because that's another thing, you know. Some people, you know, worry about getting put on child support and all that stuff, you know. If the Lord wants you to be on that, ain't nothing that you can do to stop that, man. Okay, and that was already, you know, meant for you to get, you know. But, you know, not having children here, you know, and then having children in the kingdom, you know, you'll be able to, you'll have something to look forward to, you know. Even, you know, the children, people with children, you know, have something to look forward to, but, you know, you won't have to worry about, you know, none of the headache that comes along, you know, on this side, you know. And when I talk about children, you know, it ain't about, you know, a specific age number. You know, it could be, you know, grown adults, you know, that probably was raised or whatever, you know. If you know, you got someone that's in this truth that you're trying to help out, you're like a father unto many. Okay? But, you know, it's pretty much your seed, you know, your seed that comes from out of your loins. Okay? If they are the elect, that's a beautiful thing, man. Okay? It says biblically, legacy was never merely about DNA. It was about what spirit is passed down, what laws were taught, what name is preserved, what inheritance is left. It says, and what future generations walk in righteousness or corruption. That's why the scripture often connect children with blessing, covenant, strength, household honor, future dominion, and a continuity of a righteous name. Okay? And I'm going to get this. The book of Isaiah 60 and 21, right? It says, thy people also shall all be righteous. They shall inherit the land forever. The branch of my planting, the work of my hands, that I may be glorified. A little one shall become 1,000, and a small one a strong nation. I, the Lord, will hasten it in his time. And then, you know, before you know it, man, you're going to have a ton of children, you know, in the kingdom. And you ain't going to have to worry about, you know, oh, man, can I afford these children? Or, you know, how many cows I got to, you know, I got to, you know, dress, as the scriptures say, you know. How are we going to be able to feed all of them? You know, we ain't going to have to worry about those carnal things, because the Lord is going to make sure that our children are taken care of. He's making sure our children are taken care of now. Okay? But, you know, children are supposed to be viewed as a blessing. You know, if you are the hopeful elect, you know, you're on the right path. You're on the perfect path, you know, to the best thing that your children could ever be a part of, man. You know? So with that, Lord willing, this is edifying. I want to say shalom till next time.